Hi there, welcome back to All Things Home Care. I'm your host, Dana Arnone, and today we are very blessed to have yes, blessed. You're a blessing. I'm here with one of my very good friends who happens to be an elder lawyer and one of the best in all of New York. That's a big thing. That's huge. You don't really deserve it, though.
I'll take it.
Okay. Mr. Tzvi Saperstein. He is the partner in Salem, Shore, and Saperstein, located in Lake Success. So Tzvi and I have known each other for a very long time. We've done business over the years, and there's really nobody that I would trust my own parents with, other than myself, to apply for or to talk about estate planning, long-term planning, and Medicaid. So we wanted to have a conversation because there's a lot of what you call myths out there about applying for Medicaid or who's eligible or who should come talk to you. So why don't you just talk about... Why don't you just talk about your a typical client that might call you?
I would say a typical client for us tends to be somebody who has a parent currently in rehab or someone who may have just been recently discharged. What we find a lot in our field is that human nature prevents people from calling ahead of time. A lot of people don't like to do things when they don't have to. Mm-hmm. And they usually call us and say, hey, listen, we never really did any planning, and we know we should have, but mom is in the rehab or dad's in the rehab, and we're going to start needing some help.
Well, who's telling them to call you?
More often than not, it's going to be some of the discharge planners in the facility, social workers. Occasionally, if they're in the facility, it could be a roommate or a child of a roommate who says, listen, this is what we're on. We took advantage of this program. You should learn about it. And I think one of the biggest issues is when people call, they're already assuming I'm in trouble because I never did anything. Mm-hmm. And what we tell people is what's great about New York is when it comes to care at home, there's no such thing as too late. There's no punishment for not doing planning 3 years, 5 years, 7 years ahead of time. The New York Homecare Medicaid laws are incredibly favorable, and we'll go into discussing them shortly. But it's good.
Look who's leading the podcast. What happened here?
But it's good to know for families that there's no such a thing as, oh no, we're behind the 8 ball, or we can't afford to pay for home care for a year because we didn't do anything ahead of time. It's not a very punishing system in New York. When it comes to nursing home Medicaid, on the other hand, which people are familiar with, it's another law. Mm-hmm. But the home care law, which we find most people have heard little tidbits about, but not really the truth in the entirety about it, it tends to be incredibly favorable. And
okay, so I have a question. So if someone's going to the hospital, they go to rehab, when's the best time they should be contacting you? Upon admission, upon discharge, does it really matter? Or when do you find most people are making that phone call to you?
So unfortunately, most people make that call towards the end of their stay in a rehab. But there's a but to that. In other words, when you go into the hospital and the rehab setting at first, sometimes people aren't sure if they're going to come home with help mm-hmm. or they need to stay in a facility long term. So when you're not sure, if you asked us, that's the best time to come learn because we'll teach you about both avenues. We'll teach you what happens if you're going to come home with care and how to get that set up right away, or we'll teach you about the nursing home realm as well. Mm-hmm. Many people, instead of learning both laws, they'd rather focus on one. So they watch mom and dad in the facility, they see how they're doing, and when they feel, or when the social worker or therapist gives them the thumbs up and says, hey, listen, mom's been here 8 weeks, she's going to be able to go home with help. That's when they make the call to us. Okay, now we're looking at home care, and they call us. The only disadvantage about that, if there is such a thing, is you can start applying for home care Medicaid while you're in the facility. So people who call us on the way out of the facility, there's going to be a gap of about a month or two where they don't have home care in place through Medicaid, and they have to private pay. Mm-hmm. If you went into a facility and 2 or 3 weeks in, you said, you know what, dad's for sure coming home, we could get started and file for Medicaid at that point so that by the time you are or dad is getting discharged, Medicaid is already in place.
So is there anybody that you would say, don't bother applying for Medicaid, or is there people that you would turn away and say it's not really in your best interest?
It's a tough question.
Mm-hmm. But a good one.
It's a very good question.
Thank you.
Because usually what we tell people after educating, the key is educating everybody. There really is no such a thing in New York to how much assets you have. Mm-hmm. You're also, as we'll discuss, there's 3 elements for Medicaid for the assets. So the first part about that is a home. And if you want care at home, you're allowed to have a house in your name. people often will look to do extra planning in terms of what do I do with my house, and they get nervous, I gotta move it, I gotta transfer it, and that's not the case. And we usually advise our clients, you don't need to do anything with the home to file for Homecare Medicaid and to get on Homecare Medicaid, and we advise, there's a lot going on now. Don't just go and throw your house into a trust or something because someone told you to do so. When it comes to Homecare Medicaid, you're allowed to have a home in your name, at least to start. And there's plenty you could do in the future, but at least get started on the program. Don't add on more than the family needs at that time. That's A of assets. When it comes to B, that's liquid money, that's even easier. You have to have less than $15,150 in your name by the end of a month to be eligible for the first day of the next month. So for example,
Total money, though.
Total liquid. Liquid means non-IRA. So liquid would be bank accounts, money market accounts, CDs, a second property. Or the way the law works for New York specifically for home care, you can transfer your assets during a month and be eligible the first day of the next month. So for example, if I had $500,000 in my name today and I said, oh, I'll never get on Medicaid, that's not true. Because if you're willing to transfer those assets, whether it be to children, whether it be to a spouse, whether the conditions set that you want to move it to a trust, although there are definitely pros and major cons to that as well. You have any option you want. You can move the money wherever you want, and by the following month, you will be eligible for Medicaid, just like somebody who had no assets.
But what if they have no one to transfer it to?
Okay, so if you have nobody, if there's no spouse or no children, then they have to decide would they rather spend down their money, or at that time, would they rather move that money into a trust so that it's protected for other charities or nephews or nieces, and then in the future, that money will go to those people as well.
Families often find themselves overwhelmed when their loved ones require help to function on a daily basis.
Good morning, Reliance Home Senior Services, where we bring great home care to your home. How may I direct your call?
We at Reliance Home Senior Services are a full-service geriatric agency specializing in home health care in the 5 boroughs and Nassau County. Our services include geriatric care, daily grooming and hygiene, monitoring diet and nutrition, accompanied walks, assistance in taking medications, and case management services. To have our licensed staff maintain quality of life and independent living for your loved one, call 516-308-4840 or visit www.reliancehssny.com. Reliance Home Senior Services. We bring great health care to your home.
So I have a question. So Medicaid doesn't care who gets the money.
Medicaid doesn't care where your money goes. It could be family, it could be friends, it could be a trust. A lot of attorneys will tell you right away, move everything to a trust. Again, key is be educated. There are definitely a lot of negatives to that. There are certain situations where we do set up trust, but more often than not, we find people call asking for them. And when we educate them on the options and maybe keeping it a little more simple, they tend to not go that route.
So the IRA is the only thing that becomes...
Good question. So that's the last part of assets.
I didn't
which is
finish
the
my
IRA.
question.
I know I read your
but
mind.
I know you don't.
I do.
I didn't
mind.
finish my question,
I read
though.
your mind.
No, my question was, though, if it's an IRA, if it's an IRA...
Like the sister I never had.
Okay, forget it. I'm done. Go ahead.
The good question.
I
though.
didn't, but you don't know my question.
I'm going to make it better.
Okay.
With regard to an IRA,
He's crazy.
IRAs for Medicaid, Medicaid's great with IRAs because they give you two options. They allow you to either liquidate the IRA and treat it
Do you
like it's
suggest they
liquid
do
money.
that, though?
Depends on the case,
I
and
know.
that's based on option 2. So your first option is liquidated. What's the good thing about that? Whatever comes out of the IRA, you could move out and it's protected. What's the bad thing? Is that you're going to pay taxes on that money at this time. It's income right now. Medicaid actually gives you another option, and they say you can keep your entire IRA. You could be a person with a $100,000 IRA as long as you take out the required minimum distribution each month. And that's a set amount of income that's going to get added into your income each month. And whether or not that's a good option or not, we have to talk about how Medicaid treats income. But the nice thing is for IRAs, you got options.
You got options. Okay, so, but you're talking about the trust,
The pooled income, pooled income. So to summarize what you asked me earlier is there are people who say it's not worth it for them. The simple answer so far is when it comes to assets, whether you are a millionaire, whether you have 20,000, whether you have a house, whether you have an IRA, no problem. It's all a matter of understanding how Medicaid allows you to treat it. And again, this is specific to home care Medicaid. This is not nursing home.
Right. So would you suggest people give you a call at your office if they have those kind of questions?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely the key.
Would you like to plug your office?
Shortly. The key to all Medicaid and the key to doing anything is being educated.
Okay.
It's very easy to tell people we do it 200-300 times a year, just trust us, but that would make you a very uneducated consumer, and you would have no idea why you did something, and you would also have no idea as to why you did not do something else. So our goal would be for you to understand, maybe, look, there are certain situations people come in and don't go on the Medicaid, we'll talk about in a moment. There are situations that people do a trust or whatnot. If you're going to do something, you got to know why you did it. You got to know the pros, and you have to know maybe why you shouldn't have done it. And if it makes sense for you, at least together you're fully educated.
So if you have somebody who, have you ever had someone that came and you're just like, there's no way you should apply for Medicaid? Like who? Because
Not based on assets.
Not
ever.
okay,
Ever.
so
There's no person that's too. Look, I know it sounds crazy for a lot of people, but the joke is you could be a millionaire on Homecare Medicaid. You could be a millionaire today and qualify next month. And for some people, it's a matter of, I understand there's ethics involved for them or morals or whatever the term may be. Our job is to teach you the law. We're not skirting around the law. Rather, we're following the rules.
the law is the law.
The law is the law. It's what New York works. And my opinion, and I'm sure a lot of people feel as well, is that it's a matter for Medicaid, it's a matter of choose their poison. Because if you had $200,000 in your name and you spent that down in a year and a half.
You're going on Medicaid anyway.
You're going to the nursing home.
Oh,
and
you're
for
going,
them, right, because you're not going to get it for free. If you don't have any money left and you need things at home, you can't even afford your rent or whatnot or incidentals, and you end up in a nursing home, Medicaid is going to pay 4 times as much.
So have you seen, how long have you been a lawyer for?
I believe almost 13 years.
13. So have you seen a change in Medicaid over those 13 years?
There's definitely been change. I think less in the law. The law is almost exactly the same, minus some small increments each year of, instead of 14.8, then it's 15, then 15.1.
Well, it's going up with inflation, but I guess
Very
my
little.
question, but the goal.
The law is I will tell you though, which is a good question, and the implementation in terms of how the hours are determined, who determines the hours, who determines the aides. I tell clients that's the non-legal part. That part is probably more confusing than the law tenfold these days.
Right, but my question was really going towards the fact that
I should start listening to you.
you really should, because you'd learn a lot.
I would.
So the goal of Medicaid now is not years and years and years ago, because I'm older than you, as you point out regularly. A
lot.
People that were going on Medicaid were the destitute, the poor. They could only keep their money, anything excess over that they had to give back to the state. So over the years, we've seen the transition that we want people to age at home. So Medicaid has made it so that they have that income trust to set up so that they can utilize their money, their income, to stay at home. That's been a change over the past few years. It wasn't always that way.
No.
I know that you're not old enough to know
No,
that,
it actually
but
is,
I am.
It is. Actually, that came into fruition right around the time we started practicing. And that, just so you know, I don't really use the word trust because I don't want people to get confused.
I know.
It's called a charitable pooled income trust, but really trust, like it's the name of a company, almost like the Northern Trust Company. So I call it the charity. And what is that? Which you bring it up, it's a good point. When you go on Medicaid, a lot of people also have this myth that they feel they heard from someone. They say, I make too much income. It's not for me. Forget my assets. Maybe I have, maybe I don't, but I make too much income. And I think that is probably the biggest misconception we have. It's not even the assets, because people hear, oh, you could give it away, that's great, but I make too much income. And the reality of that is not true. And I think it's very specific. You can teach it in 2 sentences, just being specific. And the reality of the income is there is a limit to how much you can keep, which means when you qualify for home care, right now, when your income comes in each month, which it will continue to do, approximately the first $862 that comes in is yours to keep. That means do whatever you want with. If you pay for a secondary insurance like an AARP, you'll get an additional credit. So if you pay $200 for ARP, you'll be able to keep $1,062. But that's how much you can keep. And keep means
Whatever
no
you want
questions
to do.
asked.
Go to Atlantic City.
Correct. A lot of people say that's nice. Hey, it's great I have a house. Great I gave away $500,000. Great I have an IRA. But I can't live on $862. And the answer is Medicaid doesn't want you to. There's a limit to what they can keep. Medicaid lets you keep, but there is no limit to how much income you can utilize and use. And how is that? There's a program each month that's called the charitable pool income. And the way it works, to keep it simple, because I don't like math, If I made $1,862 a month, $1,862 a month.
Is that
of
the
income,
normal income that you see people having?
I say somewhere between $1,800 and $2,500
Right,
usually. Teachers and retired police officers more, but
Around
somewhere
$2,500.
somewhere around two to $3,000 is probably fair.
Okay.
So let's say I made $1,862 a month. So that that income comes in when I'm on Medicaid. The first $862 is mine to use as I wish. That $1,000, what we call overage, the difference between what I make and what Medicaid lets me keep outright, which is $862, is $1,000. That gets sent to a pooled income. There are many charities out there. You can send it by mail, you can send it by wire, however you want. Out of that $1,000, they will take out about $100 as their fee. And the remaining $900 there is available for the Medicaid applicant to use on his or her bills, whatever they are. For example, if I send in $1,000 and after the fee comes out, I have $900 to use, and my rent is $900, the charity will use my income to pay my rent for me for $900. If my credit card is $1,500, they're not going to give me money, but they're going to take the $900 I gave them and they're going to use it towards my credit card. So as long as I have bills up to my overage amount, I'm always going to be able to stay home. So, for example, if I make $4,000 a month of income, but I'm paying for a mortgage and for property tax and for credit card bills and for you name it, any bill that could be for me, I have clients on Medicaid with $4,000, $5,000, sometimes even $6,000 a month of income because they have the bills to offset it.
Let me ask you a question, though, because this just came up this week. Does the bill have to be in their name, or can it be...
Every charity is different. If it's a husband-wife case, some charities will pay 50% of the bill.
What if it's a son and mother?
So it depends. You have to ask. Each charity works differently. Some will prorate it based on who lives together. Some will prorate it. Often they'll say if it's a husband-wife, they'll pay the full amount. The charity has broad discretion. Charities will pay whatever they think is reasonable. If a son pays for it and wants to get paid back, that's possible, but he's going to have to submit proof to the charity.
Yeah.
Typical bills include, you always start with the biggest, the easiest. Your credit card bill is easy. Maintenance, rent is easy. Taxes are easy. If you find that you have a $4,000 overage and you only have $3,000 a month of bills, you can find licensed people to help put money into the home. You could find a painter and pay them $1,000 a month. As long as it's a licensed, legitimate, legal type of venture and it benefits you, the charity will pay for it. And this is a way that, if you look at it, outside of that $100 fee to the charity in that case, you could be a person that before Medicaid, you had $4,000 a month of income, you had a home, $500,000 in your name, and an IRA, but you have to private pay for care. Now fast forward onto Medicaid, instead of $4,000 a month of income, you're living off of $3,900. You're only keeping about $8 and change, but you're utilizing the other $3,800 through the charity. Your house is protected. There's many things you could do as well, simple things, life estates, trust, many different options, but you don't even have to. Your asset is protected whether you transferred it to spouse, to kids, or got a little bit more complicated and set up a trust. And your IRA could be protected as well. And you're getting free care as many hours a day as it's determined that you're going to need.
Okay, so I think that will lead us into a whole other discussion at another time, which is the enrollment process, because most lawyers just do the application, get them accepted, and then you pass it along. You don't do that enrollment.
No, right. So in our case, I mean, when I sit with clients, or when anyone in our office sits with clients, we tell them that when you're working with us, you're going to work with us until the aid's set up, and ongoing if you need any phone calls, if you need any intermediaries, because the teaching people that they can have family members be aides, they could have friends be aides, how the aid processes work, as well as how the evaluation process works, giving them an education before it even gets to you guys so that they're familiar with it. Then by the time you guys go over it with them, they're a little bit of a veteran when it comes to it. It won't be the first time they heard it, which is a big deal, as opposed to having, because there's 4 or 5 hands in the cookie jar. And if people don't know what to expect, and our job was just to get you accepted to Medicaid, then we'd say, here you go, here's Medicaid. Then you're going to have 15 1-800 numbers to call, and you're not going to know where to go. So our goal is to really educate them, and so that when they come to an agency like yours or any other agency out there, they're going to know, they're going to be familiar with what they're about to hear.
Very good. Okay, so just before we wrap it up, do you have a consultation fee? How does it usually work in your office, just so that we can have anybody listening contact you?
Sure. So we work with everyone. We try to work it. It's probably a bad business model, but we try to work.
You really do have a bad business
I
model.
know. Try to be a case by case. We generally have a $375 consult fee. If the funds are an issue, we'll always work with everybody. It's important that we educate people. We feel that we do a lot of volume and we could afford to do that. We also feel that once we educate you, if we do a good job, and we teach you that most of our work, we don't take major retainers up front. A lot of times we only get paid when we get accepted, or we work with families. You probably have 100 families with 100 different fees, but we try to make it that it's fair to everybody and it's affordable to everybody, because to not go that route or to feel like I have to spend every penny on a lawyer before I even get to this process would be something that we personally wouldn't want for our own families. So we try to be paid forward that way.
Well, I have to say that that's actually not a scam. That's 100% true. You do pro bono work
how we
as
met.
well. Is that it? That's not how we met.
We did.
No.
We had a case together.
Oh, that's true, but not with Medicaid.
True. It was a mistake.
It's true. So anyway, the knowing you as long as I've known you, I will let. I would say that you're one of the kindest people, and you're very genuine.
Say more.
I know that's it. You already have a swelled head. But anybody wanting an excellent lawyer, someone who comes from the perspective of kindness and caring, and really from you're coming from a human part, that you want people to understand, and
that's the key.
It is the key,
Education.
and free education. And for you, it's more about the follow up business. It's not about that one time business.
Correct.
You're not a lawyer that looks for that one that one fee and move on.
Our name means everything.
100%. So if anybody has any questions, you can call Tzvi Saperstein at 516-472-7030. I know your phone number by heart.
And the firm name.
Saperstein.
Salem.
Yeah, but why does I have to go in that order?
Salem, Shore, and Saperstein.
Okay, so Salem, Shore, and Saperstein. So you can call them again, 516-472-7030, and ask for Tzvi, or Dory, or David, because all your partners are equally as kind. Or you can visit us at RelianceHSSNY.com and get in touch with him that way as well. So I thank you very much.
Pleasure. My pleasure.
It's always your pleasure.
That's true.
Well,
So wise.
goodbye. Thank you.